All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar, Scaling Your Venture, 7 Strategies for Success, a fireside chat with Jeff Hoffman, founder of Priceline and participant in getting Priceline off the ground. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ellen Sue, Yale College class of 2013, and a member of the leadership team of Accelerate Yale and Yale Angels. Our discussion tonight is co-sponsored by the Yale Alumni Association of Cleveland, and Accelerate Yale is a global community of alumni and friends of Yale who are engaged in innovation, tech, and entrepreneurship. Please note that we are being recorded this evening with all participants muted. Tonight's session will be 1 hour, and we will reserve the final 25 minutes of this evening for your questions. If you do have a question that you'd like to submit, please do so via the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. And now I have the very great pleasure of introducing our moderator and our featured speaker for this evening. So our moderator this evening is Wendy Maldonado D'Amico, class of 93, an independent consultant providing services in project management, events, communications, and partnerships. Most recently, she worked at the Yale Alumni Association, YAA, on the 50 Women at Yale 150, a celebration commemorating the dual milestones of coeducation at the university. She also served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Central America, and she holds a BA in English from Yale University, an MPA from Harvard's Kennedy School, and an MBA from MIT Sloan. She serves as a member of the YAA Board of Governors, as well as the director for the leadership teams of Accelerate Yale and Yale Angels. Moving on, our featured speaker for this evening is Jeff Hoffman. Jeff Hoffman, Yale College class of 83, is an award-winning global entrepreneur, proven CEO, worldwide motivational speaker, and best-selling author, Hollywood film producer, a producer of a Grammy-winning jazz album, and an executive producer of an Emmy award-winning television show. In his career, he has been the founder of multiple startups. He has been the CEO of both public and private companies, and he has served as a senior executive in many capacities. Jeff has been a part of a number of well-known successful startups, including Priceline.com, Booking.com, Ubid.com, and more. Jeff serves on the boards of companies spanning the globe, supporting entrepreneurs and small businesses on a worldwide basis. He is the chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, which works with entrepreneurs in 180 countries, as well as being a founding board member of the Unreasonable Group, whose startup companies have operations in 185 countries and have raised over $4 billion in funding. He is also the global chairman of Dream Tank, a worldwide youth problem-solving network. Jeff supports the White House, the State Department, the United Nations, and similar organizations internationally on economic growth initiatives and entrepreneurship programs. Outside the world of technology, Jeff has produced TV shows, movies in Hollywood, and produced musical events, including concerts, tours, charity events with such artists as Elton John, Britney Spears, NSYNC, Boyz II Men, Pitbull, and others, and serves on numerous charity and nonprofit boards. What an amazing list. Jeff, it's an honor for Accelerate Yale to host you this evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to turn it over to Wendy, who will kick off the conversation.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Okay. So before we get started, I wanted to just give a shout out to our friend Chuck Weller with the Yale Alumni Association of Cleveland. Thanks to Chuck, we have Jeff here this evening. Chuck introduced Jeff to us, and we're so grateful to you, Chuck. So thank you so much, and I hope you're out there watching right now because this wouldn't have happened without you. So Jeff, before we get started on talking about your tips on scaling businesses, I thought it would be really fun to have a picture of you as an undergraduate at Yale, your class of 83. And I'm curious to know who you were back then and if there were any inklings of the entrepreneur you would become, because as we all know, Yale is a very academic type of place, and over the years has become more entrepreneurial in nature. But in the time that I was there, class of 93, and I imagine when you were there as an undergraduate, that was much less the case. So paint us a picture of Jeff Hoffman, undergrad. And what college were you in?
Davenport.
Okay.
Interesting that you asked that, and I'm smiling because my hero became a very good friend, which was Yale President Bart Giamatti. He was not only my hero when he was the president when I was a Yale student, but he became a really good friend and advisor after that. But it's interesting that I'm a very practical person, right? I grew up with a single mom, 4 kids, not a lot, didn't have money, went to a big public school out west in the Arizona desert, relatively different from a large percentage of Yale students. So I've always been focused on really just practical problem solving, getting done what needs to be done. And I remember one day I submitted in writing a proposal to the president of Yale, to President Giamatti, suggesting that at the time, the programming language in the computer science world was Fortran. And I suggested that Fortran meet the language requirements the same as Spanish, French, or German. And
I love that.
It caused a huge debate. And I reasoned that, you know, if Yale is preparing me to get along in the world, I can probably get along better with Fortran than I can speaking French in my case. And it created a town hall hosted by Yale faculty discussing the value of liberal arts. And in the middle of this thing, President Giamatti turned to me and he said, "Can I ask you something?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "A thought just occurred to me. Were you serious?" I said, "No, that was intended to be a joke." And he said, "Oh my God, we have half the campus in here in a town hall." He said, "If you tell anybody you were joking, I'll kill you." So we had a debate about liberal arts, and I sent it to him as a joke, not knowing it would get presented to the academic committee and the dean. I just very quickly, I never thought about being an entrepreneur, but I was always focused on independence and on problem solving. My mom worked multiple jobs just to make ends meet. I had full ride scholarships to every school except the one I wanted to go to, which was Yale. And I went anyway because Yale's where I wanted to be. And I didn't have enough money to pay for it. But even as a kid, I would find a way to make money, ask people if I could clean their garage or mow their lawn so that when I needed a pair of shoes, I didn't have to bother my hardworking mom. And what I discovered is when you want something and you work really hard, and you come up with your own plan and you make money, it's not about the money. It's about this feeling of independence and accomplishment. So I work really hard to get into Yale, and I get there and find out I'm not going to be able to stay because I actually can't pay the full bill. And I remember sitting in the bursar's office and having the discussion, you know, Yale's done all it can, but you have to actually pay for college. And in all fairness to Yale, of course you do. And I didn't have the money. And I wasn't going home. So I started my own little business, a software company. I started it for those of you who are in Davenport or Pearson, you've been in the tunnels. I started it in a little dark room in the tunnels where I wouldn't get caught running a business on campus. I got a table and a little computer, and I started my own software business and started soliciting clients. And I wound up running my first company from campus that funded my entire Yale education, and I graduated in 4 years. Yale became a customer, a paying customer. I actually rewrote the tuition billing system at college, which was kind of funny because I almost got kicked out one day because they called me back down to the office and they said, "Why is your bill suddenly paid in full $0?" I said, "I was just doing a test of the new billing system," right? I was using myself because I would know that that was me. And they're like, "Are you sure?" I said, "I promise you." But so the answer to your question is, I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur, but I set out to understand the relationship between big dreams and hard work. I want a Yale degree. No one's going to do it for me, but I could probably find a path to solve this problem. It turned out that starting a company gave me the ability to get what I wanted, which was to pay for that degree and graduate in 4 years. When I left, I remember thinking, you know, what's next? You kind of say to the world, you got another problem, bring it on, because now I actually think that I am capable of solving problems myself because I just solved a big one, which was getting myself through Yale.
Very cool. Okay. So you leave Yale and you go on to apply these problem-solving skills to various companies, including Priceline and UBID. And I'm just sort of fast forwarding here because I know why people came to hear you speak this evening. And you get to the point where you feel like you have something to share and you write this book with your friend David Finkel. Why did you decide to write this?
So the question that I get asked, or here's what I hear all the time from small business owners, it's one of two things. Entrepreneurs, you might be working in corporate America and you have this idea that you can't stop thinking about, and you want to launch it and you're thinking about starting your own company. I want to create a product out of this idea. You just don't know where to start. So one of the things people ask me all the time is, I don't even know how to start creating a business. But the main reason David and I decided to write a book called Scale, Proven Principles to Grow a Business, is the thing I hear the most from small business owners and entrepreneurs is, I'm stuck. We started the business. At the beginning, it started to grow and it's not growing anymore. How do I achieve explosive growth? How do I take a small business and turn it into a big one, right? When Priceline was launched, and the actual idea that was created by its founder, Jay Walker, who had a idea for a reverse auction technology, and a small team of people gathered in Connecticut to launch a company. And so very humble beginnings in Stamford, Connecticut, for a company, and Priceline.com and Booking.com are the same company for those who don't know, that is now does business in 190 countries and is worth about $90 billion today. And it was started pretty much on a table with a small group of people with an idea. So the question is, what was between point A and from A to Z, what were all the steps in between? And that's what people would always ask, myself and David, what do I need to do right in order to turn my small business into a big one? And we were blessed enough to do that multiple times. We created ubid.com, and that became a multi-billion-dollar company as well. So having personally made every mistake you can make at least 3 times, when we look back, now to be fair, I wasn't smart enough to know a lot of this stuff going forward. Looking back, when people said, how did you guys do it? And we had our failures along the way too. What we did was we said, let's go make a list of all the stuff that actually worked. And that's the basis for Scale. And that's the basis for, honestly, most of the mentoring and coaching and consulting that I do now, is sharing with people the list of things you got to get right if you want a small business to grow into a really big one, which assumably is what most people want.
That's exactly right. So let's say, you're a Yalie, you've graduated, the big fancy gates have clanked shut behind you, but you're out there, you've started a business, it's growing. All of a sudden you get to that point that you just mentioned, you're stuck. Growth is stopped. You're working all the time, but you're not moving the needle. So where do you begin?
All right.
Where to start?
Sure. And I'm going to go off script here and tell Mr. Handel that I will, when I get a chance, Sam asked me about the board behind me, which is all the sayings that I believe in. So if we get a chance, I'll point out a couple of those
definitely.
Later. I think Sam's related to John Handel, who was in my class and a good friend while I was at Yale. Step one, we'll cover a bunch of these, but here's the first and probably most important thing, especially for business owners, founders, CEOs. And that is this. Now, I'm going to summarize it the way I always say it. You can't scale until you can let go. And you can't let go until you can trust and empower people to take pieces of your business and run with it. And you can't trust and empower people until you surround yourself with people smarter than you. So here's what people tend to believe. People say to me, Wendy, they say, I'm working harder than I've ever worked before, and I'm not growing anymore. Well, I'm putting in more hours than I ever did. And it's because that's the exact opposite of what you need to do. The key to success is to spend less time running the business and more time out of the office hunting for people smarter than you and letting them build the business. You have to be surrounded by these people. You have to let people take pieces of the business. Wendy, that old adage, they used to say, they still say it, if you want something done right, do it yourself. That is the single worst piece of advice you could ever be given as a leader, right? Here's the counter to that. I think this is maybe an African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And so that is exactly step one. You got to stop running the business all day and you got to start finding these people smarter than you and assembling a team and getting out of the way. Scale happened when I trusted people. And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. You don't even need to ask me, go do it because you're smarter than me anyway.
Okay. So how do you make that leap though? I mean, you've spent all this time building something, you've poured all this love and time and energy into it, and you feel like you've got these great they've got this great thing in place. You're starting to bring in people and you've got to let go. What's the key to letting go with those smart people in place? Because if they don't know what they're supposed to be, I guess I need the next step or the next leap of faith here.
All right, so I will tell you kind of an exercise that I'll share with people. This is very kind of practical and actionable, but I'm an engineer by trade. I got an engineering degree at Yale. And that's kind of how I think through everything in a very sort of sequential manner in that sense. By the way, later, that's why I started the music and film company, because I needed to make sure that the other side of my brain got a chance to come out every once in a while too, since I spent so much time on the left logical scientific part. But there is some advantage to that. And that's that I learned to create this thing. This isn't a real term. I'll call it a linkage chart. And the linkage chart starts with writing on the wall the very reason you are building this business. What is the fundamental transaction that your business exists to and I'll use our example, that exists for? Why are you doing this? What has to happen? So in our case, it was until, I would use the term butts in beds. Until somebody books a hotel room, we have no reason to go to work every day. We are there for one and only one reason, to make sure you book a hotel room. So you start by writing that on the wall. This is this concept that I use called a linkage map. Underneath that, and you might write a goal, book 1 million hotel rooms this year, whatever the goal is. So from that goal, you begin to break it down into, so that's the top level goal. Then you have objectives. How are you going to get to that goal? Well, we'll sell 200,000 hotel rooms on the West Coast, 250,000 in the Midwest. We're going to sell 50,000 hotel rooms in Canada. Those are objectives under the goal. Under each of those objectives, you write strategy. How are we going to sell 50,000 hotel rooms in Canada, right? And you write that strategy. Under the strategy, you list the tactics that you're going to need to do. We're going to need to open a Canadian office. We're going to need to start a Canadian sales campaign. I'm just sticking with my example. Underneath tactics, you write tasks. Underneath tasks, you write skills that those tasks take. And then here's what I did. I brought those people in, and I literally did this. I handed everybody the marker, and I said, I want you to walk up to this board. I want you at the bottom of this chart. I want you to draw a line from you in this room to the way you're going to help us sell 1 million hotel rooms. And so what I had them do was circle the skills you have, circle the tasks you can do, circle the tactics those tasks support, the strategies, the objectives up to the goal. And so each person had to show how their presence in this company was going to contribute to selling hotel rooms. So once I did that, there was clarity. Everybody in the room said, I know exactly what my role at this company is. And it's kind of like a huddle in a football game. We said, ready, break, and everybody went and played their position. But they can't do that unless you establish the relationship, the clarity between their skills, their tasks, and the specific reason you are growing this company. We were very efficient because everybody knew what they were supposed to do every day. And when they got lost, if they weren't sure how the task they were working on was going to help sell an additional 100,000 hotel rooms, they came to my office and said, I don't know why I'm doing this. Give me something else to do.
Okay. So you've got all these incredible people in this room telling you exactly what their role will be to help you build a business. They've owned it. Quick backup. How did you find these people in the first place? All these people who were smarter than you are?
All right. So another excellent question, Wendy, because I didn't know this. I didn't know this at the time. So here is the traditional way. And trust me, I'm absolutely not trying to offend people in the traditional HR business or recruiting business. The traditional method is you post a job on some job posting place, or you might even go to a recruiting firm and try to find somebody. But what I said was that you want to find people smarter than you. And the lesson I learned is that if you only had $100 to spend, making up a number for the sake of the example, what a lot of people tell you to do is try to hire 10 people for $10 each, right? You're trying to spread that money over as many employees as you can. And I'm going to tell you this, rock stars far outperform average people. You cannot build greatness on the backs of mediocrity. So the old model of trying to hire people for the least amount you can get, so you can hire as many people as you can with your budget, I think is bad advice. What I decided to do was instead of 10 people for $10 each, if I had $100, I would rather hire 3 people for $33 each, 3 highly paid rock stars, because each of those people does the work of 6 average people anyway. So how do you find rock stars? The answer is when you post a job, rock stars probably aren't the ones answering. Most of the people answering a job post and are posting statistically are people that lost theirs. The best people in the industry probably aren't looking for a job. They're gainfully employed. They're not going to wander into your office looking for you. So how do you find the industry's best? The answer is you go hunt them down because they're not going to come looking for you. So I came up with this technique where I would schedule 2 days a month where I would go talent hunting, Wendy. I would tell my team, I'm not going to be in the office today. I am leaving to go hunt talent. I'll give you one quick example. One day I realized we had enough people that we needed someone to run HR. All right, I'm an engineer. I've never been trained in HR, but I'm doing the interviewing. Who taught me how to interview people? Nobody. I'm just doing it because it's my company. So again, thinking you can do something just because you own the company, you're only really good at one thing, each of us. You need people smarter than you in every area that you're not. So I said, I need an HR person, but I didn't do a traditional posting. I called around and I asked people, where do HR people hang out? And everybody said SHRM. I was like, what is that word? And they said, it's an acronym, Society of Human Resource Managers. So I Googled SHRM and I went to the website, and on the website it said, don't forget to register now for the annual Human Resource Executives Conference. So I registered and I went to the conference, and there was like 1,000 HR managers and me. And people looked at my badge and they said, you're not in HR? I said, no. They said, what are you doing here? I said, shooting fish in a barrel. I said, there's 1,000 of you and one of me, and I need someone to run HR. And then I circled the names of all the speakers at the conference because those are typically the leaders in the industry. And I wound up hiring the keynote speaker who had just won the award for HR Manager of the Year for the United States. And her name was Angela, and she ran HR for me for my next 4 companies. You have to go out and hunt talent. They will not find you.
I think what you just illustrated also was kind of how you approach problem solving. You're very much an out of the box thinker. You know, a lot of the Accelerate Yale community attracts people who are interested in innovation, who they themselves are innovators. So I'm curious how you keep those innovation skills sharp. You said that you're very practical and that you're a very logical thinker, but at the same time, you know, there are many examples in your book, and with the example you just came up with, which are very, very unconventional ways of problem solving. So how do you keep those skills sharp?
So I did this, again, thank you for that question, because I think that's really important. Again, this is something that I sort of learned looking back, but I'm just going to give you a quick example. I started long ago with this question. And actually, it's funny because I don't usually add this part, but I'm going to. This really started with my, well, one of 2 all-time, 3 favorite classes when I was a Yale student. One of them was John Bloom's history class, but Blum was amazing. The other was something I took called the History of Science. Well, it was called Science Since Babylon, and it was written by a Yale professor, Dr. Derek DeSoya Price. But the other class that I absolutely loved was a cognitive psychology class. And my advisor at Yale, who was Roger Schenck, who ran the artificial intelligence department, which was, by the way, AI was the reason I had to go to Yale to be part of that study program. And in a cognitive psych class, Professor Schenck made us think about the amazing and mysterious and impressive way a human mind processes information. So when I left Yale, I was thinking, the world's most successful people, whatever it is that they do, the world's most successful people, they must be doing something different than everybody else. And so I started paying attention and wondering, and my experiment was, not my experiment, my study was, every time I got around really impressive people, my heroes and role models, I started to pay attention to what is it they're doing that everybody else isn't. And here's what I learned. They are processing a way broader slice of the world than the rest of us are. And what I mean by that is Ellen's company, for example, is medical devices. So if you were in healthcare, what do you work on all day? You work on healthcare, obviously. If I were to say, hey, Ellen, I'm going to a banking conference. Do you want to come? Ellen would be like, Jeff, we're not in the banking industry, we're healthcare. And so what I noticed about the world's most impressive thinkers was the far end of their funnel was just much bigger, and they were taking in so much more info. So I created a technique I'll share very quickly. And this is the answer to your question of what do I try to do to keep my mind fresh? It's kind of like, I hate to say this to New Englanders, but Derek Jeter, the former New York Yankee, is a friend of mine. And one day, Derek, we were on the phone and Derek said, I got to go, I got to practice. And I said, yeah, me too. And he laughed and he said, you don't practice. I said, actually, I kind of do. In the same way Derek hits pitches and fields balls at shortstop all day, I do this exercise to keep my mind in top shape. So I created a term, I call it info sponging. And what I do in info sponging is I take 10 minutes every day, the first 10 minutes of the day. If you can't do this every day, try to do it once or twice a week. The first 10 minutes of the day, you do not work for healthcare, and you do not work for your company. For 10 minutes a day, you're not at your company and you're not in your industry. And here's what I do. I challenge myself to learn one new thing every day that I do not need to know, and I have no idea why I'm learning it. I read an article from another industry, watch a video, buy a magazine, something to see what ideas the rest of the world that I would never look at in my actual job has created. Studying ideas. So that's what I do in info sponging. I read one thing that I don't need to know every day, and I write down a one-sentence conclusion. And I want you to think of that. Every piece of knowledge you acquire, think of it as a puzzle piece. Wendy, if I gave you a piece of a puzzle and said, what is this? You'd be like, Jeff, you gave me something blue. I don't know what this is. If I gave you 2 or 3 pieces, you wouldn't know. But if I gave you a piece of the puzzle every single day out of the box, and every day you moved them around your desk and stared at them, one day Wendy would call me and say, Jeff, I can see what's forming from these pieces. This puzzle is going to make an Irish castle. That is what you do with data. You see what the rest of the world that you would never look at normally is doing in industries you're not in and that you don't care about. And what you try to do is take their best ideas and synthesize them in your industry in a way that no one in your business has ever thought of before. That is literally how companies like Uber were created, by combining concepts like the sharing economy, micropayments, task-based freelance work. None of those things had anything to do with taxis. He combined disparate ideas from other industries and other people into a whole new way to look at his industry. So that's what I do on a regular basis to try to keep the idea flow going and to try to keep my mind sharp and not focused only on one industry in a channel.
Okay. Very interesting. So one of the things that you talk about at the end of Scale is not only sort of this idea of keeping your mind fresh, but also leaving that time for your mind to breathe almost, making sure that you take a step back to really look at your business and give yourself room to look at it objectively and to work smarter, not harder. And I think this is often a huge challenge for startup entrepreneurs in particular, who are just working all the time. So can you talk to us a little bit about how to crack that code of working smarter, not harder, and truly working to bring value to your venture?
So so here's an interesting thing with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs brag about the fact that they work round the clock. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm up all night. I work on weekends. I'm always working. Here is the truth. Working around the clock is not a badge of honor. It is a badge of inefficiency. I don't take pride in the fact that as an entrepreneur, sometimes I did pulled all-nighters. What I take pride in is if I can do in 2 days what it takes you all week to do. So your goal should be to design your business so well that while your friends are working 6 days a week, you got the same amount of work done in 2, so that you in fact actually can go out on the lake, canoeing, kayaking, go for a run, whatever it is you do, read a fiction non-business book. You should not be proud of the fact that you work all the time. You should be proud of your ability to design a business that's so efficient. And that's why in Scale, I won't walk you through it here, but in our book Scale, David and I talked about systems, processes, automation. It's outsourcing and automating as many pieces of your business as you can, the pieces that are not your secret sauce, and focusing on that sort of secret sauce piece, the thing that you do in your business that nobody else can compete with. But again, systems and processes and automation and outsourcing, all those things we talk about in Scale are all about focusing on efficiency, on not on hours put in. You don't need to be working more in the business. You need to be working more on the business, right? A lot of people have heard that expression before, but it's true. It's stepping out of the business, looking at it top down, saying, what stuff am I spending time on all day that is in fact not creating more value? And Wendy, I'll go back to that linkage chart that I said earlier about our goal is to sell 1 million hotel rooms, just making up a number. You should have that written on your wall behind you. And when you're doing something during your day, you should look up at the wall and say, is the thing I'm doing right now actually helping sell 1 million hotel rooms? Because if it's not, I need to stop doing it. It's a time and motion study to say everything I do during my day either adds value specifically to the goal or stop doing it. You are never, quit getting stressed out about your to-do list and the 20 things on it, because 18 of them are never going to get done anyway. What you do is you wake up every day, you pick up your to-do list with 20 things, you sort it in priority order with the answer to this question: which thing on this list does the most, gets me farther down the field to selling 1 million hotel rooms? I'll do that one first. What's second, right? So you do things in order of bang for the buck, and you'll never get through the list, and it doesn't matter. I actually sort my priorities every single day to say which of the things that I could spend my time on today is going to help me sell more hotel rooms, and I don't stress about all the other stuff that I could never get done.
One of the other things that you talk about in Scale is sort of the iterative process of strategic planning. Can you just talk, it seems to dovetail on what you just said in terms of working smarter. How should somebody approach that whole iterative process? Like, how often should you be kind of recalibrating or readjusting how you're approaching your business from a strategy standpoint?
Wait, I want to make sure I understood that. Would you mind repeating that?
Sure. So there was a section in Scale where you talked about just kind of planning your business in a strategic way, but not treating that plan as kind of written in stone, but that you were periodically, that you do set out a plan, but you periodically revisit it
Sure.
with KPIs, and that you look at it on a regular basis so that you can match it against your current business climate, what you're facing, and adjust it accordingly. So my question is just about, how often should you be doing that? Should it, what's realistic so that you are truly doing it in a way that doesn't drive you crazy and you're still addressing the most important needs of your customers, but you're not, you are still working smarter and not harder.
Yeah, so there's a couple of pieces to kind of peel back from that. The first part is about the plan itself. And we tend to focus on a solid 12-month plan. By the way, another technique that I just started doing at the beginning, here's what I see a lot. The year ends, it's December. The stakeholders are in the room. It might be you, the entrepreneur, and your investors. And I'll come in on ones that I'm working with, and I'll say, how did the year go? And the investor says great, while the entrepreneur says great, while simultaneously the investor says bad. And I'm like, wait a minute, you guys were in the same year in the same company. And the investor says, I thought we were going to get a lot more done this year. And the entrepreneur says, I can't believe how much we did get done with the resources we have. And the question is, well, what were you expecting? A lot of times people don't really assess their performance against the plan until the end. So one exercise that I started doing was basically on December 31st, figuratively, we take out 2 sheets of paper. On one of them, we draw a picture of what failure will look like. At the end of 1 year, if our numbers, as quantifiable as you can make your business, if our business looks like this, we admit we have failed. And then we take one and we write down what success looks like. At the end of a year, if our business looks like this, these quantifiable milestones and achievements, we will consider this a successful year. Then we work backwards from that list. If that's the list, if that's the definition of what a successful year looks like, what do we have to do to achieve that list of results? And we give that to all the stakeholders, employees, partners, shareholders, investors, everybody. And by the way, what success looks like is what we use to back down the plan for the year. But it's interesting, the failure one, I used to make everybody sign it. And my employees would say, why are we signing this? And I said, because you are pre-firing yourself. If we get to the end of the year and our business looks like this, I should not have to ask you to pack up and leave. We failed, we all agree to it. So we know what success looks like, we know what failure looks like. So given a pretty well-defined definition, then we have a 1-year plan. We have a quarterly update to the plan, but we have a monthly check-in. So we do a weekly stand-up meeting. How's it going? We do a monthly check-in against the plan. We make quarterly adjustments to the plan because the world gives you data. So the plan is a living thing. And then 1 year is solid. We have to hit what we really said in 1 year. Year 2 is pretty good. Years 3 through 5 are fiction, right? And so I'll just add that last part. When people say, since years 3 through 5 are fiction anyway in a business plan, do I really need to write a business plan? And I'm going to say this about that. Yes. And the reason why is because people are using a business plan for the wrong thing. They tell me, I don't want to write a business plan because I don't know the answers and I'm making up the answers. And the truth is that a business plan isn't a place to write down the answers. It's a place to make a list of all the questions you need answers to figure out if your business is working and fine tune it. So I'll just say that again. The business plan is the place where you make a list of all the questions you need to collect data for and find answers to, so you can determine if your business is working and how to fine tune it. That's why you do need to do a plan.
Okay. So this is a segue into my probably final question for you, is because I want to make sure we leave time for our attendees to ask questions. Are you using this methodology with the businesses that you are helping, all of the businesses in Latino communities, Black-owned businesses, LGBTQ businesses, women-owned businesses, all of these businesses that you're currently working with through your organization, Jen? Remind me again of what the acronym stands for.
Sure, it's the Global Entrepreneurship Network. Real simple mission. I'm the chairman of Jen, and our mission is to help anybody, anywhere who wants to launch a business be able to do so. We are now on the ground in 180 countries, helping people help themselves by teaching them how to launch a business.
Okay, so are you able to use this methodology with any entrepreneur in any country and any area? Does it work with everybody?
The fundamental rules apply. The cultural nuances don't change the core blocking and tackling of business. And the program that you mentioned, Jen, along with our partners, Hello Alice, a small business support firm, we noticed that during the pandemic in the US, it's the same all over the world, but we started in the US, that small businesses that were minority owned, and I'm going to give you the data. We discovered that Black-owned businesses in the US, about 89% of those that applied for the US government's PPP funding, small business support, did not get it. Hispanic, Latino businesses in the US, 91% didn't get funding. Female-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and LGBTQ. Those 5 populations did not get the funding. So one of the things, and since now Terry and other people have asked, The single most important words in my life, people keep saying, Jeff, why don't you just retire? And there's 4 words that make sure I'll never retire. The most important words in my life are on the top of that board. It says there is no they. They don't help those people. They don't get funding to Black-owned businesses, Latino-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, whatever. There is no they, it's you. And so that being our sort of core principle of life, we said, let's help. So we started our own grant program during COVID, where we're giving out anywhere from $10,000 cash up to $50,000. It's not a loan, it's just cash. It's not government money, it's private money of ours that we're handing out to try to save as many small businesses as we can. And that is the program that I have a company in the music business, and my good friend and business partner, Pitbull, I don't know what kind of music you guys listen to, but Pitbull is a friend and partner. And you might have seen the TV commercials Pitbull and I did to get the word out to struggling small business owners that we're here to help you because there is no they. So we've saved as many small businesses as we can in our own way during this time. And we're getting ready in 2021 to take that global to help small businesses in many places as we can. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about that. It's the work that matters to me.
Excellent. I love it. Okay. So, of course I could be, selfish here and continue to talk with Jeff, but that's not why you guys came. You came to ask your questions of Jeff. So, so I'll have Ellen come back. And Ellen, I will now hand it over to you to manage the Q&A.
Okay, wait, let me quickly, Ellen, let me answer Zanati's question because I should have said it.
Absolutely.
A Black female entrepreneur and asked how you get funding from that grant program I just referenced. It's COVID19businesscenter.com. COVID19businesscenter.com. Go there. That's where we give out the cash, the applications there, as well as we do mentoring of startups to help people with their business as well. So thank you for reminding me. I should have said that.
Perfect. All right. So we've got a bunch of questions. I know you addressed some of the whiteboard-based questions. So we'll jump really quickly to Anthony's first question, which is, are you following the undergraduate Yale Entrepreneurial Society, YES? And what entrepreneurial lessons can be learned as an undergraduate? So advice for any of the folks out in the audience that are currently in school.
Absolutely. And the answer is yes on YES and the Sci Center. I recently gave a talk at Sci Center. I gave a talk at SOM. In the past year, I have made it a point to get more involved with my alma mater and try to be a more active part of the entrepreneurial scene at Yale. And since, even though I never used the word entrepreneur, I was one while I was at Yale. I was just a guy that wanted a Yale diploma and wasn't going to stop, wasn't taking no for an answer. But in fact, I was an entrepreneur because I started a business, made money, served customers, created products, and was able to pay for that degree. So for undergraduates, here would be my advice. Entrepreneurship is about one simple thing, problem solving. Okay. A lot of people now come to me and they say, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. Or people come to me, Ellen, and they say, I'm an entrepreneur. I say, what does that mean? They say, I have an office, a business card, a website, right? I was like, yeah, you got everything but an idea. Entrepreneurship is one and only one thing, solve a real problem in the world. So as undergrads, what should you be doing or could you be doing? You should be studying the ebbs and flows of the world to find out, to see where problems are coming, trends that are creating. COVID created a zillion of them for us. The future of education, online education, telemedicine, the future of work. All of a sudden, COVID exposed that we don't have good solutions or enough solutions for any of those things. So if I was an undergrad now, I would be already with a sheet of paper and a pencil and literally sketching out ideas for how I could create value, create solutions, apps, products in the future of education, in the future of medicine, in the future of work, massive global markets. So that's my advice to undergrads, is you can start now by digging into, one quick thing I used to do when I was an undergrad, I used to look at it was more relevant then, dating myself, of course, on the Yahoo homepage, at the top of it, it would always show the top trending searches. So every day when I was an undergrad, I would go look at the top 10 things the world is Googling or searching for. Why? I don't know, but there's got to be some gold nuggets in there. If I am constantly paying attention to what's on people's minds, odds are I'm going to see a pattern in that data, and I'm going to say, wow, everybody seems to be Googling this, so they must be worried about that because they must not have a good solution. Maybe that's where my next startup will be. I'll solve the problem that everybody seems to be worried about. So that's my advice. Go study a problem that you can solve based on trends that other people don't even see coming.
Absolutely. I think that tracks a lot with my experience as well. Moving in, I think one of the things that you're particularly that you've got a lot of expertise in, and what your book is about scaling. And so I wanted to bring up Pin's question. They write, "Thanks, Jeff, for sharing, and Wendy for asking the questions." So they are actually a former Priceline product manager. They're working on a startup to help people master skills. Through practice with peers and video sessions and an AI virtual coach. They've added the link there. But they're wondering about what are key ways to get product market fit, and how important is it to get there before scaling, or kind of where do you see product market fit in relation to kind of your advice with scaling?
Sure, absolutely. So Silicon Valley, famously, and I will say one proud thing coming out of Priceline, when we launched the company, at one point early on, the 20 largest, most successful internet companies in the world at that moment in time, 19 of them were in Silicon Valley. Priceline was in Connecticut. And so we love that because we used to say that, in fact, Silicon Valley does not have a patent on innovation and creativity, right? They have a great business model. There's a lot to learn from it. But you don't need to be there to do it. And in fact, now I'm going to say something that every time they fly me out to Silicon Valley to give a speech, and I say, really, you're flying an East Coast guy out here to tell you guys how to innovate? I always get in trouble because I make comments like the fact that some Silicon Valley advice isn't always brilliant. And one of them is when everybody started talking about the MVP, your minimally viable product. Build an MVP, push it out into the market, and test your product. And I'm going to argue that if you aren't collecting feedback from the market until you've built an MVP, you're already too late. And so I was doing this TV show with these CEOs, and the host said, what do you as a leader, what's the first thing you do when you have a good idea? And everybody in the room said, I get my team and I go to the whiteboard. And I said, I get my keys and I go to the parking lot. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? The first thing I do when I have a good idea is I go assess product market fit by leaving my office, driving across town, finding the people that I think will buy this product, and spending a ton of time with them, not in a survey, not in a Survey Monkey, not in a MailChimp survey or focus group or market research. I literally change clothes, go hang out with these people, try to understand what their day and their life looks like, and try to get an idea of if I'm way off base. A quick example was we had a product we were building at one point where our customer was housewives. They were stay-at-home moms specifically. Turns out I was not a stay-at-home mom. So you know what I did? I would schedule every other Friday. I would leave the office, I would change clothes, put on jeans and tennis shoes, and I would go to the produce section of the grocery store. Because at 11 a.m. when my friends were all at work, the stay-at-home moms were in the grocery store, in the produce section. And I wandered around there, not pretending that I was surveying them, not telling them I was building a business, just chatting with moms all the time and slipping in questions that help me understand how they think, what they care about, what moves them, what they want. And I let them, moms designed my product in a produce section of a grocery store, not me in my conference room. So product market fit is everything. And you should start on day one by spending a day in the life of the person you think is going to buy this product before you even start building
it. Excellent. I do want to tie this into a question that came in later. And this is kind of also around the product market piece, but someone was asking about what are strategies for a startup that requires behavior change from its target market before it can grow. And I know behavior change and cognitive behavioral therapy is a really hot kind of technology tool right now, but I think it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on that, or is that question the right question to be asking?
It is the right question to be asked, but people focus on the middle of the process, which is a behavior change, and you really need to only focus on the end of the process, which is the why and the what's in it for me. No one ever wants to change their behavior. It's better, that isn't true, but it's better for you to assume that no one ever wants to change their behavior and they never will. So instead of focusing on the behavior change, you need to focus entirely on the benefit. What is it that person wants? So let me give you an example. Very quickly, I started a music company and I took a break from tech post Priceline. And we were doing music tours. My company, we were doing, this is embarrassing, but we were doing tours. I was on tour at the time. We did Britney Spears and Elton John. And I was on tour with Justin Timberlake and NSYNC back in the day. And we were on tour and I was thinking about that question. Because a nerd friend of mine, as the music industry told me, had shown me something called an MP3. And I said, what is that? And he said, well, it's like digital song. And I was like, that's cool. So I started, because I was working in the music biz and because NSYNC at that time was the biggest band in the world, we had the attention of all the record label execs. So I was telling the CEOs of record labels, you should look at this thing called an MP3. And what they said was, whatever you and your nerd friends are working on, we're not interested. Digital music, that's stupid. People have record collections and now they have DVD collections and they want to collect DVDs and they're not going to change that behavior. The talk was about the behavior change. Could you get them to stop collecting records on their shelves or DVDs? That was the wrong discussion to have. The discussion was to focus on what people were thinking when they woke. The truth was, this is what I said to those labels. I was talking to the CEO of the world's largest music record store at the time. And they flew in from London just because NSYNC was there. And I said, why do people do business with you? And he said, because they want to buy CDs. I said, no one wants to buy a CD, Ellen. And the guy said, Jeff, are you nuts? We sell millions of CDs a year. I said, yeah, that's behavior, but that's not intent. No one wants a CD. He said, you want to see? Look outside in the store. Everybody's lined up to buy a CD. They must want CDs. I said, it's crazy because no one wants one. No one wakes up in the morning saying, geez, I wish I had a round piece of plastic with a hole in the middle in my hand. No one wants to drive to the store. No one wants a CD. And he rolled his eyes and said, you're an idiot, basically. And he said, what do they want? I said, when people wake up in the morning, all they want is a song in my ear now. I want to hear that song. No one wants a CD. That's activity. That's behavior. Buying a CD is behavior. Hearing that song is intent. So if you had focused on intent, you know what you would have done? You would have invented the music industry. You would have invented the iTunes and the iPod. The music industry failed to invent iTunes and the iPod and committed suicide because it focused on behavioral change and concluded people won't change behavior. It didn't focus on intent. So my advice to you is market to intent, not activity and not behavior. Again, if you thought your job was to get a song in my ear, that all I want to do is hear that song, then you would find a way to get a song to me quickly. And the behavior wouldn't matter because as a consumer, if you ask me to change my behavior, I'm going to say no. But if you ask me about my intent, why did you go to the music store to buy that CD? Because I want to hear that song. And if you said, oh, well, if you just want to hear that song, I can get it to you right now. They're going to say, great, I just want to hear the song. Tell me how. They don't focus on the behavior either. They focus on the intent.
That's a really great point. I think that's probably the best answer to give to that question. Switching tacks a little bit, I know we are close to time, but I wanted to get to a point that was brought up in a couple of questions. I know you had focused a lot on, hire the people that are smarter than you, get people in the team that you can trust and that can kind of take the work forward and hire rock stars. If you're a small startup, either, fairly resource constrained, you don't have a lot of funding, or you're working like you do with some of your small business internationally, where you're in a very resource constrained environment, how do you start to bring those people on if you don't necessarily have the money to pay them or kind of the resources to bring them on more traditionally?
Okay, so if we can't do another question after this one's so important that I'll take a minute to answer that. And if we can't, Great. I'm looking at the chat as we go. I just saw Colin McNabb and another friend. So it's nice to see friends out here. And Chuck, you're not allowed to ask questions here because you and I talk all the time anyway. Here's the fallacy. People believe, you know what entrepreneurs say to me all the time, Ellen? They say, I don't know how to hire people or bring anybody onto the team because we can't pay anybody. And then they say to me, I haven't paid myself. I'm not taking any money. By the way, are you, Ellen?
Yes, finally, I am. I am being paid a salary.
But you worked for free for a long time, didn't you?
I did pay myself, and I didn't work with any investors who said that I shouldn't. So
because everybody wants you to get paid. We don't want you to be stressed. But anyway, here's the point. People say to me, it's funny, they say these two things in a row. They say, I can't even pay myself. So I don't know, I can't pay any employees. Then they say, no one's going to work for free. How am I going to hire people? And I have to say, wait, the sentence just before that, where you pointed out that you're working for free, they say, yeah. And I say, so apparently there are people that are passionate enough about missions and impact on industries and products and being part of something that they will work for free. You're working for free yourself, so clearly there are people that will. So what they're really saying is not that I can't find people when I don't have money. What they're saying is it's hard to find people when I don't have money. And another day I can tell people on the wall behind me, there's a no 299. That's a story about the difference between working hard, right? And well, let me phrase it this way. Everybody wants to be successful just till they find out what it takes, right? And then they're like, ooh, that sounds really hard. Yeah, it's really hard, okay? So finding those people that are like you, believe so much in the impact you're gonna have in changing your industry that they're willing to start working with you for no salary, get the product out as quickly as you can, or an investor, so you can pay yourself. There are other people like that will do that as well. The last thing I'll say about that is you're making a wrong assumption when you assume that salary is the only thing those people care about. And I'm going to give you a quick example of that. When I interview people, I don't start with the salary and the job description. I start with this question. I ask people, tell me one thing you need to do with your life so you'll look back one day and you'll say, I spent my time in this life well. Right? I use my time on this earth well. That's my first interview question. I asked an engineer this when I was starting a startup. He had an engineering job with a good salary at a company at the time. I said, hey man, before we even talk about the company, the job, can you answer this question? Tell me something you want to do with your life that will make your life fulfilled. And he said, oh, Jeff, that's easy. He said, buy my mom a house in Florida to live the rest of her life in the sunshine with no bills left, all paid off. And I said, what's the story? He said, Jeff, I grew up poor in a trailer park in Eastern Pennsylvania. We were the poor people in the mobile home park. We didn't even have a mobile home. We had an Airstream that was so old it was rusted. It had holes in it and the snow came in the middle of the night. He said, I laid there shivering in the middle of the night, looked at my mom and my sister shivering and said, someday, somehow, I'll be successful enough with my career to buy my mom a house in Florida as a thank you for the sacrifice she made to be my mom. By the way, I said, dude, you're hired. And he said, you didn't even interview me yet. And I said, yes, I did. I've heard everything I need to know about you already. Here's the deal. I did a little math thing. I said, hey man, I can't pay you right now when you come on board. He said, well, I have a salary now. I can't afford to work for free. And I said, well, how long could you stretch it out? What do you have in the bank? And he said, I don't know, 90 days and then I'd be completely broke. And I said, well, here's what I need done. Do you think you could get this part of the product built in 90 days? I don't remember the exact time frame. He said, yeah. I said, then we'll eat cheaply, right? We'll eat ramen until you get the product done, but you're betting on yourself. The sooner you build the product, you're only betting on you, the sooner I can sell it. And the better your product is, again, you're betting on you, the more money we're going to make. And there's no upward cap on your salary to start up. I'll share revenue with everybody, plus you'll have equity. And so when we were considering it, we did the math. I said, if you stay at your salaried job and get your salary every month, how long will it take you to set aside a little bit of money out of every paycheck to buy your mom a house? When we were done, the calculation was 34 years at his corporate job before he had enough cold hard cash to buy his mom a house. And I said, let's try plan B. We launched this startup. You're a kick-ass engineer. You build an amazing product. We sell the hell out of it. The world loves us. We make a lot of money and somebody acquires the company one day. I said, now let's draw that plan. Now, when are you going to buy your mom a house? And he said, well, it's twice the house I was planning to buy, plus all the furniture, plus money, and we could do it in 5 years instead of 34. I said, so I'm going to try to help you buy your mom a house. You can stay in corporate America. I'm not, by the way, I'm not judging anything, guys. There's no right or wrong. Whether you're in corporate America, an entrepreneur, nothing to do with right or wrong. This is a DNA thing. You should follow your DNA. But I'll just tell you that he quit his job. He came to me. He cranked out a brilliant product. Our company did kick butt. We sold the product as soon as we finished it. I did a rev share. So he made way more annual money than his salary ever would be. We sold the company in year 4. And I was there the day we took his mom to surprise her with the new house. People don't only care about money. Even though money is underneath that, people are driven by things in their lives that they might be able to have a better shot at achieving in the entrepreneurial life than they will in the corporate life. Again, it's not right or wrong. You asked me a question, I gave you the answer. I motivated people by digging deeper into how I could help them live a fulfilling life, not just what salary I could give them.
Awesome. I think that's, I think that gets down to, I guess that ties into what you were saying about the market research too. It's you're trying to figure out what people's priorities are and what their goals are. And that goes just as well for your customers as well as for your employees. Actually, I know we're a little over time, but if there's any questions that jump out into the chat as you're looking through them, that you want to tackle.
Yeah, I'll do the last one that I just saw. And I wish I've read them all, and I wish we can answer them all. And I'm sorry we don't have the time. As you and Wendy and I discussed, I'm trying to get personally more engaged in the Yale entrepreneurial ecosystem so that I can try to be helpful to people wherever that I can. So hopefully we'll have other opportunities. But let me answer the last question that's in there. And the question was, you recommend bootstrapping as long as possible or to raise funding early on. And this is another one that I am going to, and thank you to Tara and to Viviana. I appreciate your founder comments in the chat over there. This is another one I quote, blame Silicon Valley on because Silicon Valley was built and driven by the investors. Investors, and it's a brilliant service they did for us. They created an ecosystem and a model for how to launch fund startups and grow them. We all owe them a debt of gratitude, but everything they said wasn't right or wasn't magic. One of the things is investors don't make money when their money is by sitting on funds. They make money by turning it. They need to invest in startups in order to get an exit or a return. So by definition, what are investors telling you? You should take some funding. Why? Because that's the only way they make money is if you let them invest in the company. So I think it led to this fundamental belief out there that all these entrepreneurs come to me and they're already pitching for funding and way too soon. And what I'm going to tell you on the other side of that, in terms of your probability of getting funding, what today's investors want to see is traction. And they want to see literally that you have done everything you could possibly do without money before you're asked for money. So here's a little drill that I started doing. I walked up to a whiteboard and I made a list of everything that I could possibly, that I needed to do, all the things that needed to get done to make my company successful, everything I needed to build and create. Then I went back to that list and I circled everything I thought I could do without somebody else's money, right? Then I spent the time bootstrapped until every single thing I could possibly think of that I could do without money was done. Then when I went to an investor and I said, I need some funding, and he said, show me what you've done. I said, here's a list of all the things I need to do. And I did everything that's crossed out were the things I could figure out how to do without money. I've done every one of them. That's all I can do. I can't go any farther. That went pretty well with an investor. By the way, I'll close with this. I'm sitting in my office one day and I got 2 startups pitching me, right? And for funding, the one guy comes in and he does his PowerPoint. And I said, all right, it's great. Let me see the prototype. And he said, we don't have a prototype. I said, when will it be ready? He said, when you give me some money. I said, all right, well, you got like an MVP? And he said, not yet. And I said, when will even a basic a bare bones product be ready? He said, when you give me some money. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, give me a wireframe, right? And he said, what do you mean? I said, here is a pencil and a piece of paper and draw the freaking product. And he said, I don't really have a drawing or design yet either. I said, well, when will that be ready? He said, when you give me money. And I said, next. That's the go get funding as soon as you can model. The next guy that came into my office, I kid you not, with his hair all a mess and his clothes wrinkly. And he came running in and he said, sorry, I'm late, Mr. Hoffman. I said, actually, you're right on time. And I said, but can I ask you something? So they always tell you about dress for success, right? Or whatever. You're pitching an investor meeting and you look like you slept in those clothes or you've been up all night. And I said, are those the clothes you were wearing yesterday? He said, yes, sir. I said, what's the story? He said, I was going to go to bed early and get a really good night's sleep so that I could impress you today and give a really good pitch. But at 8 o'clock last night, I got a brilliant idea of the way I could solve a problem without funding. And I stayed up all night doing it. And I looked at my watch and it was 30 minutes to this meeting. So I just drove to your office like this. And I was like, young man, I already like you. That is what we're looking for. You're looking for somebody that, in fact, the simple truth is giving a lot of money to average people does not a great company make. Giving a small amount of money to rock stars creates innovation, right? If you underfund brilliant people, you come back, you're like, how the hell did you do this? I didn't even give you enough money. They find a way. So you're focusing on the energy, the passion, the innovation, and the creativity of the people. Don't go get money early. Instead, spend your time proving that you have all those attributes that I just described before you ever walk into an investor's office. I not only funded the messed up hair wrinkly kid at the time, but on the way out the door, he said, oh, this is funny. He said, Mr. Hoffman, could I borrow $40? I said, you don't even have gas? He said, it's not for gas. I said, what do you need $40 for? He said, that was not the first all-nighter I pulled. And he said, well, I was driving over here. It's a true story. He said, my girlfriend called and said, you got till Friday night to take me out on a real date or I'm out of here. He said, I love this girl. I don't want to lose her. I need $40 to buy her dinner. The only thing I had in my wallet at that time were $200 bills. So I gave them both to him and he gave one back. He said, I don't need $200 to solve this problem. I only asked you for 40. And I said, take 100. And he said, well, I already figured out what restaurant would work that I could spend the minimum amount and she'd still be happy. That's the kind of person I want to give my money to. I made him take the $200 and take her out for a nice dinner. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with us this evening. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all the questions.
Yes. Oh, you did a great job answering what we could get to. And I'm sure everybody appreciates all the lovely anecdotes and all the stories too. And we have Wendy back here. So yes, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you so much to Jeff and also for Wendy for facilitating. Thank you so much for your nuggets of advice, your wisdom, even the anecdotes and the wisdom from your whiteboard. And thank you everybody for your participation, your engagement, and your questions here. I think they sparked a lot of really interesting discussions and questions and stories as well. We would also love to thank the Yale Alumni Association of Cleveland for co-sponsoring tonight's event and the YAA Shared Interest Groups for making this event possible. So the recording, I did see a question for this earlier, the recording for this evening's webinar will be posted on the Accelerate Yale LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube channels. For the person who was asking earlier, yes, you can send the link to your son so that he can watch it as well. Our next webinar will be January 27th at 7 p.m. with Jen Wong, the COO of Reddit, who is also judging our pitch off. So Jen will be talking about how to be an entrepreneur without being a founder, which I think is also on a lot of folks' minds. Like I said before, our pitch off is coming up very soon. The deadline to submit for the inaugural pitch off is actually this Friday, January 15th at midnight. We specifically invite all historically underrepresented founders from the Yale community to submit a venture for consideration. And you can go to yaleangels.org to review the criteria and the submission information. So we've got an all-star panel of judges for that. We've already got some really great submissions. We have a little bit of time left for you to get your submission in as well. And we are very pleased to have Jeff on. Thank you so much again for your time. Everybody should check out his book as well, and the links that Wendy posted in the chat. And thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the evening.
And thank you all for the comments in the chat. I really appreciate that. Thank you.